So we are going to get started. Just to give you the lay of the land, I'm Dave Aronchick. Obviously, I'm CEO and co-founder of Expanso, and here to talk to you about OpenClaw and a lot of it, really not just OpenClaw, but generic agentic frameworks and how to use them in a more secure way. Because I think we all see the power that comes from agents and OpenAI and Anthropic and all these things, these massive models that are coming, and people want to inject them into their environments so that they can get smarter about it. But you do need to be really thoughtful about how you do that in order to prevent potential leakage and other things like that. So we're here to talk about it. To further give you the lay of the land, Mahmoud is our head of GTM and is on the call as well. You may see him in the chat and so on. And then also, please do use the chat. I will do my best to check, or Mahmoud will ping me if there's a lot of people backed up there, and we can, and I will answer when I can. But unfortunately, I'm going to try and stay focused and chat about what we're chatting about. And so I may not see all your questions right away. And with that, any questions? I don't know if we can get a poll going really quickly, but does anyone, I would love to find out if anyone wants to dive in, message me directly or say in the polls, who's using OpenClaw today? Who's thinking about agentic frameworks in their existing environment? You tell me. All right, we're getting some answers. Yeah, so it's funny. I will say that one of the comments came through and said, exploring, and I think that's probably the most standard response right now. People hear a lot of stuff. This is a hype cycle, unlike I might have ever experienced. Bigger than Web3 and crypto, bigger than Web 2.0, Web 1.0. Like, this is, the number of times I have a conversation where people are like, truly, this is it. This is the pivot. Especially over the past few weeks, is crazy. So I think there's a lot of people who are exploring right now. We definitely, the awareness of the spread of what's going on is very large. And what we do with it is now, obviously, that's the biggest question. So with that, let me dive in and give you a quick overview on what's going on, and some slides just to help you think about the way the world looks and how we see it, and then how potentially something like Expanso can help you out. So let me share this. This is some slides I use to talk about with customers and folks that are interested right now. The way that you should think about OpenClaw and the stuff where people are beginning to use these things inline is, in the fall of 2022, ChatGPT is released. The first version of ChatGPT obviously takes the entire world by storm. People had thought about that architecture beforehand, the way that you could have that kind of interactive conversation with these models. But I don't think anyone had really thought about it in that way, where you really did have an experience where it felt like you were chatting with something that was real. And was it right all the time? No, but it was a very different way of interacting with artificial intelligence and machine learning. So obviously that comes along. That is hosted in the cloud, and that's a perfectly reasonable place for it. But obviously, that's not where most of your data is. It is that's not to say you're not on the cloud. You may be, but you're not sitting next to that large model. That model is being hosted on Anthropic or Microsoft or ChatGPT or whoever's infrastructure, and you're going back and asking questions of that over the web securely. But over the web, it lands there and then it comes back. And so if you have something with your data where you may not want to hand it directly to one of these external endpoints because that would involve exfiltrating the data from your environment, then you kind of are like out of luck. Now, what came along after that was the idea of agents, where you would have potentially a binary or code or whatever running in your environment, and then only a select subset of your data would ultimately go up to the cloud. That's typically what agents, how you might describe an agent. It's a self-contained machine learning interface to interact with things in your system, but ultimately go back to the cloud for the big answers. Because running, a 70 billion or a 340 billion, people have only speculated what the latest ChatGPT or Opus or Sonnet size is. Most folks speculate that these are over 1 trillion parameters, and those would be far too big for even the largest machines to run. When you're running these on these clouds, it's often spread over many machines. Okay, so you have this agent. This agent runs in your environment, and so on. What's happened over the past, let's say, 3 months or so, is really a transformation in the skill of those agents. And in particular, OpenClaw, has been particularly powerful around this, because much in the same way that these agents were new ways to interact with, ChatGPT and these other chats were ways to interact with, these transformer models. OpenClaw and these agentic frameworks feel like a new way to interact with your local agents, right? Or ones in the cloud. Again, but having awareness of your local data. So now you can say, hey, you know what? Here's a list of things that I'd like you to go and do. Here's my calendar. Here's my this. Here's my that. Go do them. And it can take action on your behalf. Now, again, sounds great, except now we get to this situation here. We're at this weird spot where you want to give it as much access and as much power as possible, because that will make them feel better. That will make them relevant to what you want to go and do. But at the same time, you have to be really thoughtful. How much of your files, your database, your APIs are you going to give it access to? Because ultimately that is going to be a big challenge. And stripping these things, credentials and data and audit trails and so on and so forth, these are going to be a really big problem. Again, we're all going to have to navigate these waters. The unfortunate part is that most of these folks out there are right now, they have to get full access to your underlying data. And the way these models work are, it's like, creating a stew. You can put ingredients in the stew, but you can't really isolate it and pull out just the ones you want. Like they were clean when you wanted. And we don't have the frameworks to really let you just hand a model a certain thing. So, what we're saying is that you want to give things, these frameworks, access to all of these various things. But the reality is that, millions of keys are already being exposed. And it's not a question of whether or not these will have access to your data. It's a question of, are things watching? How are you restricting it? How are you ultimately giving it the power that it needs, but still tracing it as it goes through that pattern? And that's a really big challenge. And so that's where we come to something like Expanso. So our goal with Expanso is we're already a distributed data pipeline. We're already a way to manage the communication between anything out there, and your commands, your queries, your whatever, and the underlying data that is running on your machines. We can already do that for you. Now, what we saw is in the past, in the past few weeks, is there's an opportunity to reuse that same infrastructure we've already built, that same security, that same isolation, that same anti-penetration techniques, but instead use it for agents and to surface a limited portion of your underlying video and, not video, any data. It could be video, imagery, audio, so on and so forth. Surface all of that to these agents, but without having to hand over all the precious keys and so on. And that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to lay this out for you in this architecture. I should stress, Everything you see here is completely public. And I'll walk you through some of the stuff that we've already launched that will enable you to make even more use of OpenClaw and all the good stuff out there. So to show you this, again, this is on our channel, and I'm just going to walk through. The reason I've recorded this is because it lets me jump around, but these really are live demos here. This is a pre-recorded video, but all the code is out there. You can download it and mess around with it yourself with no problems. Before I do that, actually, let me just see here. Any open questions? Okay. So the summary of it is that what you see here, this is what the OpenClaw interface looks like if you're engaging on the web. And on it, you can ask questions and so on. You start the OpenClaw server. Again, everyone's different. Do whatever you'd like, but ideally, you're not doing it on the production machine itself. We're going to do it on the production machine, or the quote unquote production machine here, just to show you what it would look like. But obviously, that is not recommended. And so what you see here is I want you to start a new interface, and we're going to get going here. Here, I'm able to talk directly back and forth with this OpenClaw that's running on this machine. Now, on this machine, I have a number of files. These files are running, in this particular case, sorry, I'm at the database one. Let's go to this one. We're going to start here. On this machine, with these files, sorry, let me just, I'm just going to click here. Sorry, see, real live, local files, there we are. Okay, so what you see here is on this machine, I have local files set up. And inside this directory, you can see here, I have, I'm going to have a directory full of, secret files. Let's say I have a spy agency and I want to help share. Here, when I list all these files, you can see I have this directory called secret data. The user that I am logged into, does not have access to those files. And so when I try and list it, I'm going to get a permission denied. Again, that it's working exactly as intended. Now, I'm going to show you what's in these files by elevating myself as a user. Normally, I wouldn't have access to this. But inside these files, you can see that I have secret agent information, where they are, the roster, all that kind of stuff. Pretty straightforward, kind of funny stuff as a CSV file. Now, when I go back over here to OpenClaw and I say, hey, you know what? I want you to go and access those files on disk. If this was a generic way of being set up, then OpenClaw would have access to that. And that's exactly the opposite of what you want. You had it all locked down, you had it under the right permissions, but now I want to restrict it. What do? So now I've said, OpenClaw, you don't have access to that, but I still want you to have access, or I still want to do something, in this case, create, I don't know, a birthday calendar out of this. OpenClaw says, I don't know, I don't have any way of doing it, but I have the ability to go through this Expanso pipeline that's running on the disk. Now, what you see here is a layout of the Expanso pipeline. This is, I'm showing you the code here. We also have very easy GUI wizards and things like that. But for those who really want to get their fingers dirty and get knee deep in it, this is what it looks like. So what you see here is, this isn't a pipeline that you set up to run on all these machines. And the pipeline is pretty straightforward. What it's going to do is this Expanso agent has rights to go and access this directory. And this agent is the only thing that has access to that directory. The OpenClaw agent doesn't. Other agentic frameworks don't have access. I, as a user, don't have access. We've explicitly said this agent has the ability to do it and nothing else does. And you can see what the code looks like. It's pretty straightforward stuff. It says, I want to create a birthday calendar. I want you to read from this file that you and you alone have access to. And then I want to parse that into a format that OpenClaw can now use. And that's what we're going to do here. So we do this. We go and run this on the machine. So what happens is the agent is already running on the machine, but the code is, the pipeline that you see here is not yet running. So I'm going to deploy it to the machine. And then I'm going to go back to OpenClaw and say, hey, OpenClaw, I want you to go and query that endpoint. And when I do that, now it's able to read not the raw file, but only a subset of the file that Expanso exported. And so as a result, it's able to go and build out a very nice birthday calendar out of it. Again, the purpose here is not to show you some like incredibly complicated thing. The idea is that we're able to separate what's going on, what OpenClaw has access to, what we're outputting for OpenClaw, and the underlying data. And because we did this through Expanso, we know that the OpenClaw and any agentic framework does not have access to the underlying stuff. It's only access to the stuff that we said it was okay for. Now, going beyond that, one thing that we can do with Expanso as well is we give you full visibility into this pipeline. We give you full visibility into the deployments. We give you audit logging and errors and monitoring. And we know how many times an agentic framework now accesses this data. Does this all make sense for everyone? Are there any questions? So the takeaway I want you to walk away with is it's literally one command to put this agent on your machine, on the same machine or on a parallel machine that OpenClaw now has access to. You tell OpenClaw, hey, you don't have access to this file, but you do have access to this Expanso endpoint, which will generate whatever data you need. And then you go and do that. So there you go. That's the first step. Any questions about that? So quick question about the credentials, where I store the credentials and things like that. What you want to go and look at is there's some very standard ways to isolate. One standard way is a practice called 12-factor authentication. That's where you separate things that are credentials from your application, where you put credentials in environment variables or hosted vaults or other things like that. And the point there, again, is that you're able to separate out and rotate things independently of having to change your application. So if a credential leaked or something, you don't have to go deploy a brand new application. You're able to just pick up from the vault and go from there. Good question. Okay, so now you say, okay, I don't have flat files. What does it look like to interact with a database? Well, it turns out it's exactly the same. Again, you put your agent down on that disk, and it's right next to your database, or again, just maybe has access to your database elsewhere. I tell OpenClaw, hey, I want to go do this, pull it out of this database, this Postgres database that I have set up here. And it says I can't. I don't have a password. I don't know what to do. What do you want? What do you want me to do from this point? It comes back and says it failed because it doesn't have the password, which is exactly working as intended. But we told OpenClaw, hey, OpenClaw, by the way, if you need to access this resource from this database, don't try and do it yourself. Use an Expanso skill to do that. And here you can see a pipeline that allows you to access a database. When I go and we look at the details of the pipeline, you can see here, it's very straightforward. That was weird. We have here in the middle, you can just drop a mission report, and in the mission report, you can see the details of what's going on, where it's asking for a series of columns out of the database, and it's using a local password that has been set for this particular database. And as a result, this makes it separated. This makes OpenClaw or any agentic framework separated from the underlying data. And as a result, you are able to get clear, isolated, separated interaction. Now, again, I go back to OpenClaw. I ask the question, hey, go do this and build me a mission report. And it's able to do that. But again, OpenClaw never had access to the confidential data that hadn't been vetted by that pipeline. All it knew about was there was this generic pipeline that I could go and interact with. And once I interact with that pipeline, then I can get a subset of the data to spit out the other side. And here you can see a summary of it where the important things or the confidential things have been removed. Only the subset of them were available. Does that make sense? Same 12-factor, by the way, for those that were asking about credentials. Same 12 factors, same separation, same ability to rotate, same monitoring, same logging that you have elsewhere. Just now, instead of looking at a file, we're going to go look at a file, or excuse me, we're going to go look at a database. Any questions there? So let me show you one final example. Here is this same thing, except now this is a very common scenario where people have not one, but multiple APIs or sources of data that they want to merge together before they ship it. And what we're going to do around this is not pull from just one file, but pull from file, pull from disk, and pull from a database, excuse me, and pull from API. And so now I tell OpenClaw in very straightforward language here, hey, I want you to go read from, this is the what the pipeline looks like, where I'm reading from this, I'm accessing this database, and I'm pulling from an API with a bearer token. And I want you to create an entire summary of all the mission report, where it's pulling from all three of those, it's merging it together. Now, again, that's a pretty complicated ask. It's not something I'm building into the infrastructure up front or the pipeline up front. All I'm doing is I'm saying, here's the important data that we're going to allow to be exported. And from these exports, we're going to say, hey, OpenClaw, you take this and build it into a meaningful summary of all the information that's going on. And this is where the agents really shine. Because now you can see it's pulling from this, all these various things simultaneously and merging it together into a simple report that you can use on the back end. And that's really powerful, right? That's the area that agents are great. Where they're not great is when you have to do full processing and interaction with the logs and interaction with underlying raw data. What you want to do whenever you're using agents is strip down the context to as little as you possibly can and give it just what it needs to then go forward and make the decision. If you're asking it to pour over a lot of raw data, a lot of unstructured data, you're probably going to have a bad time. You're going to eat up a bunch of tokens, and worst of all, you're going to probably leak through things that you didn't intend. But you can see here, this is a pipeline, a very rich pipeline that goes across all those things. So that's the summary of what we do and how Expanso plugs into this. At a general level, I am just absolutely floored at how powerful OpenClaw is, how powerful these agentic frameworks are. You can see here we have 172 different skills that you can use through the Expanso pipeline. Very simple skills like, I don't know, let's say I want to pull out a keyword or generate some SQL, so on and so forth, filter an array, very, very basic things, all the way up to much more advanced things like you saw up here, describe an image, caption an image, things like that. These are all skills that are built in right into the general OpenClaw framework, or excuse me, not OpenClaw, the agentic framework that Expanso offers. And we give you full examples here. All you do is you drop in your OpenAPI key, using that 12-factor practice I mentioned earlier, and then you just build up. This is what the actual pipeline looks like. It literally is this much code to run it against your backend, and then you pass it through. Every pipeline comes through, and you're able to move on from there. But it is really straightforward. We have lots of skills, of course, on our website. We have recipes set up, Expanso Hearts OpenClaw. We show you how to integrate with OpenClaw. We have pre-built recipes and how to get enterprise security around it. Lots of really good stuff. And again, this is just we could not be more excited to help, to build more features and skills as you may like. But again, you tell us. You can see all these various ways of doing that here. So with that, I'll leave it open last minute. There were already some good questions. If anyone else has any other questions that you'd like to ask, let me know. Yes, these are free. I should say Expanso starts at the low price of free for the first 5 nodes. So you can go grab it, download it, install it, start a cluster on the cloud. That's free too. Once you get to a certain size, we charge these on a per node basis, or we have some discount packages. But once you have it installed, all of this is free. All these skills and things like that, they're all free. Now, full disclosure, right? If you are using, in this case, I think we use OpenAI for this guy. Let's look at the pipeline. Yeah, so we're using OpenAI here in the pipeline. You'll have to have a key, and you'll have to have a commercial arrangement with OpenAI. But again, that's pretty straightforward for a lot of that stuff. Any other questions, comments? You saw there the URL. Please come by. We would love to have you. You can also join our Slack or chat. We would be more than happy to have you chat there as well. And other than that, we are all set. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining me on a Sunday. Look forward to all the amazing things you can build. And please don't hesitate to know how we can help. Let us know how we can help. Thanks.